Hello, I am Teresa and I'll be your host again today to take you on an exciting journey through human history. Rome's history is famously divided into two sections, the legendary kingdom and the historical republic. But how much do you know about the kings of Rome? Well, in today's episode, we're going to meet all seven. So let's get started. The seven kings of Rome were Romulus, Numa Pompilius, Tallus, Hostilius, Ancus Marcius, Tarquinius, Priscus, Sevius, Tullius, and Tarquinius. Their reigns are dated from the mythical founding of the city in 753 BC until 509 BC, when the last king was overthrown and the Roman Republic was established. While historians used to think that there was very little factual basis for the stories about the kings, recent discoveries have shown that there might be more truth to these myths than previously thought. However, it is still important to remember that legends are not history and should be taken with a grain of salt. So first, let's meet Romulus, the first king of Rome. According to Livy, he was the one who organized the first institutions of the city, building the Senate and giving it to the elders of the Roman people, defining their main duties as advising the king and the people. He also created the tribes, which were the main political divisions of early Rome, and organized the patron-client system, a key element of Roman society in which a powerful individual would take a less powerful person under their protection and help them to succeed. Livy also attributes to Romulus the creation of the Roman army, which at the time consisted of 4,000 patricians, armed as spearmen and shielded with bronze. Of course, no king would be complete without a nefarious act, and Romulus got his name down in history by killing his twin brother Remus after the two of them founded the city of Rome on the Palatine Hill. When Romulus died after reigning for 44 years, the throne passed to Numa Pompilius, a Sabine king from the neighboring city of Cornicula. Unlike his predecessor, Numa was a peaceful and intellectual ruler who never waged war, but instead focused on religious and legal organization. He reorganized the priesthood, assigning each god a specific priest and creating new priestly colleges. He also established many Roman cults, including those of the household gods, the Lares and Penates, and of Janus, the god of transitions. Livy also credits Numa with establishing the pontificate, the most important priesthood in Rome, and creating the 12 tables of Roman law, though other sources attribute the latter to the later King Laputi. Historians believe that Numa's reign was marked by prosperity and peace. And during his 40-year reign, Rome grew from a small village to a town of some size. After Numa's death, Rome was plunged into turmoil and civil war when the Senate chose Tullius, a Roman patrician and former military tribune, as the new king. His first order of business was to wage war against the Alban kings, the rulers of the nearby city of Alba Longa, who had been Rome's traditional rivals since the days of Romulus. The hostilities began when the Albolians demanded the surrender of a Roman woman who had fled to the city after killing her lover. When the Romans refused, the Albans took up arms. Although Livy claims that Rome triumphed over its rival, destroying the city and enslaving or killing most of its inhabitants, most of this story is probably mythical. However, it's true that the growing power of Rome dealt a fatal blow to Alba Longa. Following this victory, Ancus Marcius became the fourth king of Rome. Little is known about him except that he continued the process of expanding the city. During his 24-year reign, he constructed the first Roman port on the Tiber Island and built the city's walls, which were made of turf and wood. He also waged several wars, mostly against the Etruscans to the north and the Volsci and Aqui to the south. These campaigns were generally successful and expanded the borders of the Roman domain. However, it was also during his reign that the first signs of disaffection between the kings and the Roman people began to appear. Sowing the seeds of the future republic, Ancus was succeeded by Tarquinius Priscus, an Etruscan nobleman who was chosen by the Senate as the new king. This marked the beginning of a close relationship between Rome and Etruria that would last for centuries. In fact, the last three kings of Rome were all Etruscan. Unlike his predecessors, Tarquin was a warrior king who waged war against the Latins, the Hernicans, the Sabines, and the Etruscans, and even extended his domain into southern Italy. However, most of what we know about his military campaigns comes from the notoriously untalented Dionysius of Halicarnasse, so they should be taken with a grain of salt. Instead, Tarquin is remembered for his great public works, including the construction of the cloaca, the great sewer that ran beneath Rome. He also introduced the use of stone in Roman architecture, building the first stone temple to the deified Romulus, as well as the Basilica Porta and the first Circus Maximus. Finally, he organized the Ludi Romani, or Roman Games, a festival held in his honor and celebrated every August. The next king was Servius Tullius, who, according to tradition, was the son of Ocresia, the daughter of King Tarquinius, and a slave. Although this origin story is almost certainly a myth, it shows how much Rome had changed during the period. No longer was it only the patricians who could attain the highest offices in the state. Under Servius, Rome reached new heights. First, he carried out extensive urban planning projects, building new roads, settling the boundaries of the city with a wall, constructing the Capitoline Hill as a citadel, and building new temples to many of Rome's gods, including the goddess Minerva. Additionally, he reformed the social structure of Rome by introducing the concept of classes based on wealth rather than birth. This resulted in the famous Servian census, in which the population of Rome was divided into 5 classes based on property ownership. Furthermore, he increased the number of tribes from 4 to 6 and instituted the tribe system, which allowed for further political participation. And finally, he reorganized the army, increasing its size and creating a heavy infantry force armed with the classic Roman weapons, the gladius, the pilum, and the scutum. Unfortunately, this period of prosperity and reform ended with the accession of Tarquinius the Proud, who became king at a young age after the unexpected death of his father, Tarquinius Superbus, whose name ironically means the good king, turned out to be one of the worst rulers in Roman history. He was cruel, tyrannical, and irresponsible. For example, he imposed heavy taxes on the population to fund his lavish lifestyle. And military campaigns raised the prices of wine and grain and extorted money from merchants. He also initiated disastrous military campaigns against the Gauls, the Greeks, and the Carthaginians, which damaged the Roman prestige and exhausted its treasury. To make matters worse, he neglected the city, leaving it undefended and exposed to the dangers of the Italian tribes. And finally, he offended the Roman religion by introducing Etruscan and Greek cults and persecuting the traditional Roman priests. All these grievances culminated in a revolt led by the wife of the deposed king, and Servius Tullius Lucretia, who was raped by Sextus Tarquinius, the son of Tarquinius Superbus, and then killed herself. Although this story is probably a myth, it illustrates the hatred that the Romans felt towards the last king. In the end, the Senate agreed, and in 509 BC, they overthrew Tarquinius, ending the 244-year monarchy and establishing the Roman Republic. And that's all for today. Let me know in the comments below which was your favorite king and why. And if you like this kind of videos, please subscribe and follow for more. See you next time.